So on board the RSS Attenborough, I can hear you saying at home, was that the one that was called Boaty McBoatface? Yes, it is. More on that coming up in just a short time. Before that, though, he declared he'd build a stronger economy for the British people in his budget address. But now economists are warning the Chancellor's measures will leave the poorest families far worse off. The government's own forecaster says the cost of living could rise at its highest level for 30 years. I'll be asking Rishi Sunak if his plans for nation's finances add up in a moment. But first, this report from our chief political correspondent, John Craig.
Cheers. Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak raised a glass to the Chancellor's big spending budget, in which the teetotal Mr Sunak lowered the duty on draft beers, knocking 3p off a pint, and cut the cost of sparkling wines like champagne and Prosecco.
Very good.
The Chancellor joked about draft relief and beer barrel politics as he raised the tax burden to its highest level since the 1950s and public spending by £150 billion to its highest since the 70s. And in this brewery tap room in York, drinkers weren't exactly fizzing with enthusiasm about the alcohol duty overhaul either.
Cheers. People are going to drink what they want to drink, so, I mean, you know, especially people that come into bars like this. So these sort of areas, you know, these sort of bars are going to get hit by it, so it's not going to make a blind bit of difference.
I'm not really a massive drinker. I don't drink an awful lot, so I don't think it'd really bother me that much.
Back in Westminster, it's day 2 of the Commons debate on the spend now, tax later budget, with the focus today on business and the rising cost of living.
After yesterday's cheers from Conservative backbenchers and the welcome for measures such as cheaper beer and bubbly, today's the day when the budget could fall flat as the serious scrutiny begins.
A verdict on the Chancellor's budget will be delivered by the authoritative Institute for Fiscal Studies later.
It's easy to be optimistic, it's easy to be optimistic about the public finances and so on, but the reality is that we are still in a period of low growth. We're in a period of what looks like high inflation, and in particular in a period of pretty feeble growth, if any, in living standards. And so people aren't going to suddenly feel much better off, I'm afraid.
But Treasury ministers insist measures like a tax change to let lower paid workers keep more of their universal credit will make many people better off.
What we're going to see as a result of these changes is that if you're, for example, a single mum in a place like Darlington, you're renting, you've got 2 kids, you're going to be £1,200 a year better off in December as a result of the change to universal credit that's just been announced.
The Chancellor claims that despite his spending spree, he's on a mission to cut taxes before the next election. But some MPs fear turning on the taps will lead to a budget hangover. John Craig, Sky News.
To God's own country of Lancashire, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak is there for us now. Good morning to you, Chancellor. Let's start, should we, where John ended up. Are you going to cut... Good morning. Are you going to cut taxes before the next election? Let's just go with a yes or no.
Well, we started cutting taxes yesterday, Kay, our priority being those on the lowest incomes. It's a tax cut for 2 million families, and it's not going to come in until, it's not going to come in as normal next April. It's going to come in a few weeks' time so we can get help to people right now. But as I said very clearly yesterday, my ambition is to lower taxes for people. That's what I would like to do as Chancellor. We had to take some corrective action as a result of the crisis and the response we took to it. But hopefully that now is done. And as we demonstrated yesterday, our priority is to make sure that work pays, we reward people's efforts. And I'm delighted that we could make a start on that yesterday.
OK, will there be income tax cuts before the next election? Go on, go with yes or no.
No, OK, let's talk about this budget rather than all the other ones.
Well, this is what a lot of people have been asking, and certainly a lot of Tory backbenchers want to know the answer to that. So, asking for a friend.
Well, I spend time with them myself, actually. But look, I think I made a very clear demonstration of our intent yesterday. And I think it's important to remember, why are we in this position? A year ago, we outlined our plan for jobs at a time when people they feared the worst. And because of the plan that we put in place, which the independent forecaster yesterday described as remarkably successful, we've managed to ensure that economic growth is recovering, the economy's growing well, many more people in work, unemployment is far lower than feared. And because of that, yesterday, we had a budget that will deliver a stronger economy for the British people. So stronger public services, investment in our future growth, backing businesses, much like the ones I'm surrounded by today, but also supporting working families by freezing fuel duty and cutting taxes on the lowest paid. But we were able to do all of that because of the actions we took last year.
OK, highest tax rate since the 1950s, inflation potentially up to 5%, interest rates potentially 3.5%. You made no apology for any of that. That's all common knowledge. National insurance, of course, going up in April as well. How much more will you personally be paying with your national insurance? Do you know?
Yeah. Well, the thing about national insurance is it's a progressive tax, and it's been described as such by all of the various commentators when it was outlined. But as you said, the tax burden, as I said yesterday, I'm uncomfortable with it where it is, and I'd like to see taxes come down on people, which is why we took a first step on that yesterday. And with regard to inflation, that's absolutely right. That's one of the many challenges that I have to grapple with as a Chancellor. I explained yesterday, to provide hopefully some reassurance to the country, that the bulk of the inflation we're seeing is the result of two global forces. One, economies reopening and supply chains being under pressure, and secondly, energy prices. Now, I don't have a magic wand, and it would be irresponsible of me to stand here and tell you I could make those global problems disappear overnight. I can't. But where the government can take action to help with the cost of living, whether it's through things like freezing fuel duty or cutting taxes for the lowest paid, or indeed things like investing in lorry park facilities, which the Transport Secretary announced yesterday, to help attract people into that profession, where we can make a difference, of course we will.
OK, back to the question. We've made a calculation that your national insurance will be £8,500, given your salary of £148,000 as the Chancellor. You know, given that you earn a good salary, and given that you did very well in the city, and you're very comfortably off, do you feel that that is enough of a contribution by you?
Well, I think national insurance is a progressive way to raise money. The top 14% of income earners on national insurance end up contributing over half of all the sums raised from that tax rise. So I think actually it is a progressive way to raise money. Those with the broadest shoulders will carry more of the burden. And it's important to remember, what was that for? That was money for the NHS, our #1 priority, to help the NHS recover and make a start on tackling the significant backlogs that have built up during the crisis, and to implement the Prime Minister's landmark reforms to social care, something that many other governments have not been able to achieve. So that's what that money is there for. Look, there's no easy way to raise tax. There's no perfect way to do it. It's not something that's fun,
though, Chancellor.
Or people
you know, with all
not
due
to do.
respect,
But
forgive
the
me,
question
we only have a limited amount of time. But it's always vulgar
if
to
you
talk
think
about
there's a
money,
better
isn't
way
it?
to
Of course,
raise
but
it,
I can talk money with the Chancellor, can I not? If I can't talk money with the Chancellor, then who can I? You're worth tens of millions of pounds. If you are paying £8,500 in national insurance and you've got a very, very healthy bank balance, do you think that is fair? Do you think that is levelling up?
I think what levelling up is I'm standing here in the world-famous Bury market, which yesterday received £20 million from our Levelling Up Fund to improve the market, create new jobs, and ensure that places like Bury see investment. That's levelling up in practice, making sure people's communities are fantastic places to live. Levelling up is about spreading opportunity around the country, making sure that wherever people are, they have the skills, the opportunities to train. Those are the kinds of things that levelling up means. And with regard to making sure that we help everyone, yesterday we cut taxes for 2 million of the lowest paid people in the country. So that is a very clear statement of both my values, the government's values, and our desire to help those who absolutely need our help the most.
So I'm going to take that as yes, you think £8,500 is enough on your salary and wealth. The IFS, though, given what you've just been saying, they say living standards will stagnate for people who've had a really hard time, and that's because of the higher taxes. From what you're saying, you disagree with the IFS?
Well, I think I'd look at the measures that we've put in place. As we've just talked about, a tax cut for 2 million of the lowest paid people in our country. And I think your report was showing, so a single mother with 2 kids who's renting will be better off by about £1,200 a year. A couple where someone is working full-time and someone is working part-time on the national living wage with 2 kids renting will be £1,800 a year better off. The national living wage went up yesterday to £9.50, and that will mean £1,000 more for someone who's working full-time on the national living wage. So there are lots of things we are doing that will help people keep more of their money, ensure that they can earn more, and keep the cost of living down. For example,
the IFS says that living standards will stagnate. Do you disagree?
Well, actually, coming into this crisis, other think tanks said we were enjoying a mini living standards boom and real household disposable income was increasing at a reasonably rapid rate. And people will look at the measures that we've announced, whether it's freezing fuel duty, cutting taxes for millions of the lowest paid, the national living wage going up, all the investment we're putting into people's skills to make sure that they can get retraining or learn new things that will help them earn more. Those are all the types of things we can do to raise living standards. And I'm confident that over the next few months and years, just as we have over the last 12 months seen success in our economic plans, we will continue to see that success going forward.
OK, let me ask you about the climate then instead. Fuel duty frozen again, air passenger duty reduced for national travel. Do you not care about the environment?
Oh, hang on, Kay. Just a minute ago, you were asking me about living standards for people and the cost of living, and now you're upset that we're freezing fuel duty or making it cheaper on
No, what I'm doing is asking you whether you don't care about the environment.
With fuel prices,
I ask the questions, you do the answers, Chancellor.
Yeah, we just talked about this, and with fuel prices at almost a decade high, I didn't think it was the right thing to do to add to people's costs by increasing fuel duty. And with regard to air passenger duty, I think what you didn't mention is we also are introducing a new band for ultra-long-haul flights so that those who fly the furthest to places like Japan or Chile will see a higher rate of air passenger duty.
Not much of a higher rate, to be fair, Chancellor. Not much of a higher rate.
And at the same time, well, actually, if you look at the impact on carbon, the overall, I think, view from the independent forecast yesterday was taken in totality. The measures that we are taking put us further along the path to net zero and reduce climate emissions.
Okay.
And that's just one of the things we're doing. We're also investing money in creating what are called sustainable aviation fuel plants in the UK. A passion of the Prime Minister's to find, a new form of aviation fuel that's more sustainable. That was all outlined last week in the net zero strategy. And it's important to remember that aviation in general accounts for, I think, just about 8% of our emissions, and the domestic bit of that, which you referred to at the beginning, is about 4% of the 8%. So obviously this is a small amount.
OK, your opposite number, Rachel Reeves, saying at least bankers and short-haul flights, on short-haul flights, will be cheering with champagne. So that's their view on that. I'll put it to in the next hour. I suppose COP is all about action, though, isn't it? Not in 2050, but now. So why are you instead benefiting motorists and people who are on short-haul flights rather than worrying about emissions?
Well, we do worry about emissions, and that's why last week we outlined a comprehensive net zero strategy. The Prime Minister put that out there. It's, I think, widely been considered one of the most comprehensive plans of any government anywhere in the world. It was backed up with £30 billion of investment across the board in areas like offshore wind, nuclear, hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, the electrification of our car fleet, as you rightly mentioned. All those things are covered in it. So we're very clearly and credibly on a path to net zero. But I just pick up on one thing. I think you said my Labour opposite number was upset that we were going to cut the duty on sparkling wine and champagne. I'm not going to make any apologies for that. We have an irrational system at the moment of how we tax alcohol. The new system we're going to bring into place is going to be simpler, it's going to be fairer, and it's going to be healthier, and it's going to support pubs. And I know many people enjoy, whether it's a bottle of Prosecco to celebrate something. We've seen sparkling wine sales in the country double in just the last 5 years, fueled by actually bottles of Prosecco that may cost £7 or so, and the price of those bottles will come down by about 87p. And I think that's a good thing, actually, because everyone, when something good happens, wants to celebrate with a bit of bubbly, and we're actually going to remove the completely irrational duty premium that those drinks currently bear. They're no more alcoholic than still wine, but yet they pay a lot more duty. That seems to me to be unfair and silly, and I'd like to be able to sort that out.
Celebrating with champagne, maybe not those that are struggling to feed their kids, but that's perhaps for another day. Carbon emissions, is that the best place for you to be this morning?
Well, actually, on that point,
if I could ask the question, because we're almost out of time. You are at a meat market today. Why are you in a meat market when we're told to eat less meat to try and cut down on carbon emissions?
I'm not telling anyone to eat less meat. And you mentioned children. Actually, yesterday's budget confirmed £200 million a year for the Holiday Activity and Food Programme, which is a new programme that this government has introduced to provide enriching activities and meals for children outside of term time. That was something that the spending review yesterday confirmed, as well as actually lots of investment to help young families and especially new parents who are struggling with various things, because it's something that we believe is important. Those early days in children's lives and young parents' lives are really important, and as a result of the actions we took yesterday, we're going to be able to do more to support them, which I think is important.
You're not telling people to eat less meat, but your chief scientific advisor is to try and cut down on carbon emissions.
There's lots of different ways that we can tackle climate change, and last week the Prime Minister outlined the net zero strategy. I don't think there was anything about that in there, but what there was the green industrial revolution, as he would describe it, with investment to catalyse the industries of the future, to help us make the transition and in the process create lots of jobs, and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
I like to think I took a small role in you finally getting a dog. How is the dog?
Yes, you did. The dog, she's great, thank you. Growing quickly and a handful. So, but she'll start needing some proper runs soon. So you might see me out and about.
And the kids are thrilled, I'm guessing.
She's good. I'm looking forward to spending. Yeah, they are thrilled, doing more to help finally, which is also good. And I'm looking forward to actually spending a bit more time with her now that I've got this budget out of the way.
Fantastic. We see you at COP26 next week. Thanks a lot, Chancellor.
See you next week, Kay. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have a look at the impact of climate change on the planet. Should we? Talking about that with the Chancellor. Top line shows how the UK's power is produced. Here we go. And you can see how much warmer the Earth is now than in 1880, row 2. Then the figure to how long scientists believe it will take to reach the plus 1.5 degrees Celsius figure, seen by many as a point of no return for the planet, row 3. And finally, the total amount of CO2 emissions in millions of tonnes. Still to come, just after 7:30, we'll be joined by the founder of the Big Issue magazine, that's Lord John Bird, as he warns the UK is about to see a mass homelessness crisis. After 8 o'clock, we'll get more reaction to the budget with the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. We'll be joined by the Royal British Legion and one of their youngest fundraisers as this year's Poppy Appeal gets underway. Starts today, wearing your poppy with pride. The government's chief scientist says we will all need to change our behaviour, including eating less meat, Chancellor doesn't agree, and flying less often, Chancellor doesn't agree, to help tackle climate change. Just days before the COP26 summit in Glasgow, Sir Patrick Vallance has joined with scientists from around the world and called on world leaders to take urgent action. They say it's only possible to curb temperature rises by drastic reductions in global emissions within a decade. Speaking to Sir Patrick at 8:30 on the programme. Put some of the things that the Chancellor said to him at that time. Also, the president of COP26 summit, Alok Sharma, has echoed the Prime Minister's cautious tone about the conference, saying that hopes that a deal on global warming can be reached are in the balance. He's been speaking to our climate change correspondent, Hannah Thomas-Peter.
Just days from the COP26 UN Climate Summit in Glasgow, we meet the event's president, Alok Sharma, in Downing Street.
There's a long shopping list of problems that need to be sorted out. China needs to commit to more. There needs to be an agreement on phasing out coal. It looks like COP26 is in real trouble.
Look, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is going to be difficult. This is going to be a big challenge. This is getting almost 200 countries to reach consensus on some of these difficult issues that have been outstanding for 6 years now. It is in the balance.
Adding to the strain, the UN has just issued a dire warning that the world is way off track in limiting temperature rises to a safe threshold.
The United Nations Secretary General said that the issue was a leadership gap. Is it a problem with your leadership?
My job as COP26 president is effectively to act as shepherd in chief. But ultimately, this does come down to world leaders delivering on their commitments. I can't force any one country to do anything.
That definitely applies to China. It has already committed to peak emissions by 2030 and net zero by 2060. But global targets will be missed if the world's largest polluter isn't more ambitious.
We are still waiting for China to come forward with its 2030 emission reduction target. I had a meeting yesterday with the Chinese delegation.
And what did they tell you? Are they going to move?
And I made the same ask again, and I repeated that they, along with every G20 nation, has promised before COP26, 4 days from now, to come forward with that commitment.
Are you confident that they will come forward with enhanced targets?
I very much hope they, along with every other G20 country that has not yet come forward, will do so.
It is China that matters, though, above all. Do you accept that?
Well, absolutely, China. China is the biggest emitter. China matters, but soon.
Above all.
So they are the biggest emitter by that very statement.
So if they
matter.
don't move, COP is in jeopardy.
Just about all the G20, 17 out of the 20 have said that they're going to go to net zero by the middle of the century. That is a move, but of course that's not enough. What keeps me up at night is just thinking about the complexity of this, and what we want is for us to win, for the world to collectively win, so that we can say to our generation, but also to future generations, that we delivered when it mattered.
That's the ambition. Geopolitics may get in the way. In a few days' time, we'll find out. Hannah Thomas-Peter, Sky News in Downing Street.
The latest British research ship to study the effects of climate change is due to set sail from London in the next few days. Aisha Zahid is on the RRS Sir David Attenborough, and she is with us now. Hi, what's it like? Good morning.
Good morning, Kay. Yeah, the RRS Sir David Attenborough will be heading off on its first mission next month. But first, it's in Greenwich for the next 3 days for several reasons. First of all, so the public can have a look. They won't be able to get on board, but they can definitely come down and see it. And also to mark the start of COP26. In a matter of a few days, we'll see world leaders flocking to Glasgow for that climate change summit. And senior scientific advisors are also using the ship as a platform to issue an important statement to address the urgent need for action to be taken against climate change. We'll hear from Sir Patrick Vallance later today on him calling for world leaders to take action to curb temperature rises to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And he'll also be calling for world leaders to come together to address the negative effects global warming could have if action isn't taken. The RIS will be heading off in a matter of days. Next month it will be embarking on its mission in the Antarctic to see just how devastating the effects of global warming are there and to understand climate change better.
Aisha, looks beautiful there, doesn't it? And as leaders arrive in Glasgow from around the world, we'll have special coverage of the COP26 UN Climate Summit from 5 p.m. on Sunday night on Sky News. And for uninterrupted coverage of the summit, including special guests and analysis, you can watch Sky News Climate Live on channel 525 from 10 a.m. on Monday. Also making the news for you this morning, a British fishing boat has been detained by French authorities this morning. It comes just hours after officials in Paris say they'd block British vessels from French ports and restrict energy supplies to the Channel Islands unless a deal for licences to fish in the Channel can be agreed. The United States has issued its first ever passport with a new gender category. The X designation is for people who don't identify as either male or female. Dana Zim is an intersex campaigner from Colorado who claims to be the first individual to receive the new document. More than 1 million UK households may have fallen victim to a scam known as brushing after receiving mystery Amazon parcels they didn't order. Amazon says not many orders are affected and it has robust processes in place to stop this kind of abuse. There has been flooding in parts of Glasgow with a warning of further torrential rain to come. Meanwhile, much of Cumbria remains on an amber warning, with forecasters saying nearly 10 inches of rain could fall there. Sadia Chowdhury is in Kendal in Cumbria for us this morning. We are cycling up there in 10 days or so. Hopefully it's going to get a bit better by then.
Hopefully it will, but for the next 24 hours or so, parts of Scotland and here in Cumbria, the Met Office is warning of life-threatening flooding as a month's worth of rain is set to fall in these areas. Now in Scotland there are 17 flood warnings already, and here in Cumbria, look, this part of town usually is expected to get about 160 millimetres of rain in the month of October, but the Met Office is warning that that is set to rise to 300 millimetres, so that's nearly doubling. And the Cumbria Fire and Service has tweeted to say that people need to be alert to the dangers of flood water. I'll read out this tweet from them. They said, never enter flood water on foot or in a vehicle, and call 999 if life is at risk. We're here to help. That's a tweet from the Cumbria Fire and Rescue Service. Travel is also set to be disrupted, with Avanti train services saying they've had to cancel many of their services north of Preston.
OK, thank you. Thanks a lot. Quick look at the weather for you now. Next few days, as we were hearing, mild and windy, rain over some central and western parts, bringing localised floodings. Just heard that, didn't we? And those are the weather warnings in place. Now, of all the things to disrupt a round of golf, you might expect a stray dog or a fox walking across the course, but you've probably never seen this before. Here we go. Amateur Australian golfer Wendy Powick was teeing off on the Gold Coast when she faced an invasion of kangaroos.
In the middle of the fairway.
She posted the pictures on social media. Never seen this happen before, she said. They decided to charge right up the fairway. The official name for a group of kangaroos is called a mob. And they were not having any of it, were they? Great pictures. In a few minutes, we'll talk to Lord Bird, founder of The Big Issue magazine, as he warns the UK is about to see a mass homelessness crisis.
Police have just made their first move and they've gone in firing tear gas.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. There are hundreds of these turbines. There are thousands more across Gansu. That's what's left of the North Tunnel, where the North Koreans exploded 5 nuclear warheads.
This is a show of strength at a time when China is more fragile than it has been at any time in recent years.
Shrapnel from that explosion, so you can see it littered along all the way. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
The train station and the airport, they're both closed. We're not sure about the roads. We've seen reports that they are being blocked by police, so we're going to try and find a way out of Wuhan.
After 5 days stranded here, this is deliverance. We help you understand the world with us. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Beijing.
Chancellor has this morning rejected criticism that his budget plans will leave many families worse off. The Institute for Fiscal Studies warned increases in tax would lead to an almost non-existent increase in living standards. Short time ago, Rishi Sunak said raising taxes was the fairest way to pay off the public debt.
The thing about national insurance is it's a progressive tax, and it's been described as such by all of the various commentators when it was outlined. But as you said, the tax burden, as I said yesterday, I'm uncomfortable with it where it is, and I'd like to see taxes come down on people, which is why we took a first step on that yesterday. Now, I don't have a magic wand, and it would be irresponsible of me to stand here and tell you I could make those global problems disappear overnight. I can't. But where the government can take action to help with the cost of living, whether it's through things like freezing fuel duty or cutting taxes for the lowest paid, or indeed things like investing in lorry park facilities, which the Transport Secretary announced yesterday to help attract people into that profession, where we can make a difference, of course we will.
Tomorrow's here. Those with the broadest shoulders should shoulder the biggest burden. The IFS saying something completely different.
That's right. Rishi Sunak told you he's comfortable where the tax burden is right now. It will, after the changes he announced yesterday, be at the highest level since the 1950s, and that will help him fund some of this big spending spree. Increases for all government departments. We seem to be a long way from the David Cameron, George Osborne era of austerity. But the reason that some Conservatives may not be very comfortable about it is they had not expected our big reset after COVID to be a bigger state and higher taxes, but also, is it going to actually help those on the lowest incomes? Rishi Sunak said that he started cutting taxes yesterday, and what he means by that is that people on universal credit, on benefits who are in work, will keep more of what they earn, more than we expected, so they're going to be better off. Those who are not in work or can't find work will not be better off. And the criticism is that while he says that people on the national living wage will see their incomes go up, they'll be feeling better off, the Institute for Fiscal Studies said, hang on, inflation's going to hit 4 or 5% next year. We've got rising taxes, we've got the prospect of rising energy bills as well. All that might wipe it out. So you're looking actually not just next year, but in the next few years at living standards really stagnating and not going up very much at all. The Chancellor didn't accept that, although he said that he talked a lot about global forces that we can't control, but that will be the acid test, of course. Do people feel better off as a result of all this spending? And if they don't, I think the jitters will deepen in the Conservative Party about whether it has really made a difference.
He was trying to convince me also that he was a Green Chancellor.
That's right. Of course, we've got the COP summit, which is the climate change summit in Glasgow, starting this weekend. The whole point of it is all about delivering measures which right now reduce emissions, given the UN says it's very urgent. He has frozen duty on petrol and diesel yesterday. Now, the Chancellor points out that when people struggle with living standards, he wants to help them out. He doesn't want people who are really reliant on their cars to be paying more for petrol. And you can see that living standards argument, but it does jar a bit with the climate change argument, because that is the biggest green tax the Chancellor has in his armoury. And we saw that frozen. We saw air passenger duty on short-haul flights cut a bit. So I think cut in half. And so I think we saw some voices in Parliament yesterday, including Caroline Lucas, saying, the Green MP saying this is not in line with what we're supposed to be achieving at COP. The Chancellor says, look, we've announced this huge plan to decarbonise the economy, but that is taking us to 2050. And of course, the measures that happen now do really matter.
Tomorrow's Take at 9 o'clock. Looking forward to it. Thank you. Meantime, the founder of the Big Issue magazine is calling on the government to take urgent action to prevent a big rise in levels of homelessness. Lord John Bird will tell Parliament the reduction in universal credit and the end of furlough has put thousands of people at risk of losing their home. Lord Bird is with us now. Hello to you, Lord Bird. I hear what you're saying. I've just been chatting to the Chancellor. He completely disagrees. He's saying he's doing what he can to help as many people as possible, especially those on low or no incomes.
Well, I mean, he's making gestures, which obviously every Chancellor has to do. 65 million for paying people's rent arrears, when the combined amount is probably near 360 million, is a bit like taking a fire extinguisher to a forest fire. You can see that it's a good gesture. Maybe he will find more money later on. But we've got this real problem, and that is that with 500,000 people behind in their rents, and mortgages, and you've got this situation where more and more people are going to be evicted, then you could have thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who were brought into homelessness for the first time. At the same time, of course, you've got to deal with the problem of people who are already homeless. So you've got the people already homeless, then you've got the people who could become homeless. And if the government actually recognised that it is still in the middle of the emergency, rather than well into the recovery, then we would carry on the emergency until we got into the recovery, which obviously means borrowing more money. But there's only one way of getting out of this, and that is investing in keeping people in their homes and supporting them. They're topping up the universal credit. The universal credit top-up was what Osborne removed, you know, in the days of the austerity. Sorry.
No, not at all. I just wanted to go on to ask you whether, when it comes to homelessness, is it all about funding, or are there other issues that you'll be highlighting to the government today that they should also be thinking about?
Well, I mean, the unfortunate thing about cutting the universal credit is the top up is a big problem. The fact that people's cost of heating and food has gone up, the fact that actually people will probably make a decision, do they or do they not pay their rent, or do they feed the family, or do they turn on the boiler? And these are the kind of things that are actually not being addressed and need to be addressed.
Okay. I know. Am I right in saying we spoke? Obviously, we speak regularly, but we spoke a few months ago about the big issue sellers, and they've now been able to go back out onto the streets to sell their wares for the first time since the pandemic. How has that been?
Well, I mean, the problem is that most big issue vendors are not selling the amount of papers because there's not that amount of people on the streets. And also people are being more wary about the money that they're spending. But overall, we've had a really good return, and we've had great support from the public. We've had great support in the 2020 period of last year of the COVID. We had support from the government. Because we got the bounce back loan. So we're in a good position, but if we have another recession brought on by a lockdown, then we really are going to be up against it. And what we're doing with our vendors, we're doing everything possible to make sure that they are prepared, hopefully for a very, very good Christmas. But we have to look beyond that. What's going to happen in the new year? And that is why the budget, which is a great indication of where we're going, is not really addressing all of those basic incidents that everybody has to handle in the coming period.
Okay, Lord Bird, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for joining us on the programme. Thank you. A British fishing boat has been detained by French authorities this morning. It comes just hours after officials in Paris say they'll block British vessels from French ports and restrict energy supplies to the Channel Islands unless a deal for licences to fish in the Channel can be agreed. Well, our Europe correspondent Adam Parsons is in Brussels for us. What's going on, Adam? Good morning.
Yeah, a significant diplomatic row started over the past few days, now seems to be escalating. Overnight, a British fishing boat, two were spoken to, but one of them seems to have been detained in the port of Le Havre on the basis that it doesn't have the correct licence. And today, in the past few minutes actually, the French Minister for Maritime and the French Europe Minister have both been on the airwaves putting forward France's case, and both of them have been frankly quite belligerent. Clément Beaune, the Europe Minister, is saying that France will now have to use strength because that's effectively the only thing that the UK understands. And the French Maritime Minister, Annick Girardin, saying that France has to be combative. She says this is combat, it's not a war. And also saying that the strong measures will involve most British vessels being banned from French ports. Now, these measures are due to come in on the 2nd of November. if significant progress hasn't been made in issuing licences to French fishermen. She says there have been 9 months of waiting. It's unacceptable. They're defending their fishermen. British government says it's granted 98% of licences already to EU vessels. The French have responded today and say that isn't true. The figure is just over 90%, and they say the missing 10% is, in their opinion, all French fishermen. Effectively, on the one hand, this looks like a fairly small dispute over what is a relatively small number of vessels. But the other thing is, this is about fishing, which is totemically important to both the UK and France. And it happens at a time of tension already caused by the rows over the Northern Ireland Protocol. This might look like it's just a small row about fishing. It does have the potential to go explosively large. If British boats are banned from French ports, that is going to seem like a big move. And remember, Britain has said it reserves the right to take its own reciprocal measures. It says this is a disproportionate act. You know, relations between Britain and France weren't great over the course of the past year. They are deteriorating before our eyes.
OK, thank you. Thanks, Adam. Duchess of Cornwall has joined in the debate about how to prevent sexual violence against women. In a speech last night, she urged men and women to end the culture where physical abuse is seen as normal, a warning that this report from our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills contains flash photography.
They're two women who know every word they say will be picked apart. The Duchess of Cornwall and Carrie Johnson coming together to take a stand against sexual violence. Camilla using the opportunity to deliver the most powerful speech of her royal life.
On average, one woman is killed by a man every 3 days. Sarah Everard, Sabina Nessa, Wenjing Lin, Jatika Goyle and Benelin Burke are names which, with all the others, must never be forgotten. We do not in any way hold all men responsible for sexual violence, but we do need them all aboard to tackle it. After all, rapists are not born, they're constructed. And it takes an entire community, male and female, to dismantle the lies, words and actions that foster a culture in which sexual assault is seen as normal and in which it shames the victim.
Camilla has talked about the issues of rape and domestic violence for a number of years now. But what seems to have changed is in the past there was maybe a nervousness about what she said in public. Now there's a clear determination to do whatever she can to make a difference. For the Prime Minister's wife, it also could not be more personal. As a student, she was drugged by the taxi rapist John Warboys. The Shameless Festival Against Sexual Violence takes place in London next month. In Camilla, they have a powerful advocate, ready to reinforce the message that enough is enough. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News, in central London.
Students are boycotting nightclubs after more than 50 females reported they had been spiked with a needle. We'll talk to the Nighttime Industries Association next.
We want to be the first distiller on the island of Islay to go net zero on carbon emissions. Traditionally, stills are fed with steam that's generated from fossil fuels. We are going to stop that, and we're going to stop it in early next year by installation of a biomass boiler. What it does is it takes a byproduct from our system called draft, and we mix that with wood from local forests, which would otherwise not be used for commercial use. And it's a scheme. It's a plant that is funded by AMP Energy, and also so they have installed it for us. Their contractor is a company called Dalol. They will run it, and we will buy the steam back from them. So effectively, Kay, what we're doing is we're going net zero on carbon emissions on the island. Yeah. So really, to become net zero is really quite an achievement, and we will achieve it next year. So it's Yeah, we will. What we want to do is really set an example for the rest of the industry. We're not the first distiller to do it, but we're the first on Islay. And the fact is, we came up with this idea, myself and my team, just over a year ago, because we can. We don't need to wait until 2040, when the Scottish Whisky Association has set the date for going carbon neutral. We can do it now, and we think we should. We're in it for the long term, really, and our customers, are going to be customers in that time, 12 years, 20 years, and this is going to mean much, much more to them. And I hope they will thank us for doing this now, because to take this step, because actually we're not saving any money doing this, and we're doing it because it's the right thing, and our leaders in Bunnahabhain have supported us entirely in doing this.
Did you know that if we make small changes to our lives, we can reduce air pollution by loads? But how much? Exactly, loads.
There'll be a mild windy start with rain from Cornwall up into southern Scotland and heavy showers to the west. Northern England will stay wet through the morning and Wales and southwest England will turn wet, but southern Scotland will largely dry up. Elsewhere, it'll be mostly fine, but the northwestern Scotland can expect heavy showers. It'll stay very mild. Scotland will see showers clearing later. There'll be little change elsewhere. The unsettled conditions mean air pollution levels should remain low, with levels between 1 and 3 on the daily air quality index.
The Air Quality Report, sponsored by Philips Air Purifiers.
Students across the country are being urged to join a boycott of nightclubs after more than 200 incidents of so-called spiking were reported to the police. Sky News has learned that officers have also received 56 cases of spiking by injection. Let's speak to the Chief Exec of the Nighttime Industries Association. That's Michael Kill. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us on the programme this morning. How big a problem is this?
Well, it's a big problem that's been running for several decades, and the nightlife industry has been fighting it very, very hard with many, many mitigations. But in light of the recent reports and the levels that are coming forward, it's levied some huge concern for us as an industry. And, we've had to step up and really work very hard with local authorities and police to put further mitigations and lift our level of searching, training, etc., to ensure that we are safeguarding people coming into our settings.
Do you support the girls' night in boycott?
I believe without a doubt, I think it's been fantastic that the girls have stepped forward and brought this to prominence. We have been speaking with the organisers and they're very constructive and very clear with what they see that they would like to experience when they come into the settings, and we're working very closely with them alongside the police and local communities. So absolutely, I think it's vitally important this is highlighted, and we have been calling for the Home Office to do an inquiry so that we can really understand the breadth of the problem and start to understand the characteristics around these crimes so that we can tackle them head on as communities, as industries and as authorities.
I've seen pictures recently of people being searched as they go into nighttime venues. Do you feel that there are effective measures that are satisfactory in place?
I think we have some challenges, and as you've quite rightly alluded to, searching We have only got limited powers. We haven't got the powers of the police. We have gone back over to our searching policies and made sure that we're very thorough as people walk in to our premise. But, we have to have permission. And many venues up and down the country, if people are refusing searching, they're not allowed into the premise. So we've been pretty robust with our position. And I think there are lots of other things that we're doing at the moment, including training, awareness campaigns, communication, enhanced medical provision. So there's lots of work that's going on at the moment in the background, and it's been launched last week. But there's more to do, and I do believe that there is a collective response to this because there are wider societal issues, not just nightclubs, that have these incidents happening within those settings.
You say it's been going on for decades, though. So why are we still in this position, one wonders?
Well, what was normally happening with these incidences, they were sort of coming as an ebb and flow. So we were seeing some of them come up at periods like the freshers or student return, and they were very limited or isolated incidents that were being reported and being dealt with by the police. So from the perspective of the industry, we were dealing with them head on. What's happened now is there has been a very clear lift in reports, people coming forward, whether it's happened to them recently or whether it's happened to them in the past, and highlighting the challenges around this and the worry around normalisation. So we need to attack this head on. I think it's a community, industry and authorities' position that need to be undertaken. And one of the biggest concerns we have is the message around conviction, because at the moment the conviction rates are very, very poor on this.
I'm guessing CCTV would play a big role in trying to sort that out. But if someone has been spiked or fear a friend has been spiked either with an injection or their drink directly, what should they do?
I think it's important if it happens in the settings like nightclubs, bars, etc. They must inform a member of staff. If a member of the public sees someone vulnerable, they must inform a member of staff. All of our staff across the country, all of our members in the wider industry are very proactive in terms of ensuring people's welfare. So it's really important that you step forward and take an active view on vulnerability, particularly people that are compromised. Our staff are going through a regime of training at the moment, but I think it's important that our community, the people that come to our venues, take an active part as well. And we will give them the relevant medical support and also inform the police at the point that we believe a crime has been committed. But every one of these are being taken seriously, and this has been reinforced not only by police but by the industry as a whole, and many industry leaders are leading on this as well.
OK, Michael, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us on the programme. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Chancellor saying his budget will make working families better off, despite a warning from senior economists there will be no significant increase in living standards. We're going to have more on that coming up in the next hour. When we spoke to the Chancellor, he was saying that he was comfortable with the level of tax that he was paying. You can see these images of him yesterday with the Prime Minister, remembering, of course, that he doesn't drink, but he said that, if people wanted to celebrate with a glass of champagne or Prosecco from time to time, it was right that they didn't have to pay as much for that going forward. The Institute for Fiscal Studies has got a very different view on what the Chancellor has been saying. They think that people certainly wages are going to stagnate over the next 5 years. We'll have more on that coming up here on Sky News. Also speaking to Rachel Reeves for the opposition. What does she think about the measures introduced yesterday?